Microlending training programs work sometimes, they don't work other times. They maybe work for poor women, but not for very poor women. For very poor women, it seems that you have to do a bundle of services. And at that point in 2013, the one thing though that was promising was savings. So we went ahead and we started the studies, and the ExxonMobil Foundation told us, okay, let's go ahead and do 2 scientific studies with, pilot implementation to see if in fact how savings can work for women. So we started the studies, but we also started looking more in depth into the literature, and as we were doing it, a lot more evidence came out. So we were looking into the literature on savings, and this came out 2 years ago. What we did then is we did a meta-analysis of all the savings studies that existed that were credible and rigorous. And this covers, we found 49 savings studies that covered around the world, of which 13 of them provided basic savings services. So they were just basic savings without any other things to the accounts. And these were 13 basic savings randomized control trials out of the pool of 49 studies, randomized control trials. We did a meta-analysis, and what we found out was very simple, that in fact it is true that women prefer to save. If you offer a simple savings account, 63% of women will take the account versus 26% of men. So clearly there is something about women that they like to save, and they prefer to save. But how do women save? We did one study in Tanzania, and this is Rose. Rose is an entrepreneur, a micro-entrepreneur in one of the secondary cities of Tanzania. She's a widow. She has a little stall in the marketplace. She's doing quite well, and she's doing well probably because she sells food during the day, but then in the evenings, she has a license and she can sell beer. So we said to Rose, okay, Rose, do you save? And she says, oh yeah, I do save. Well, but do you go to the bank? How do you save? She says, no, come with me and I'll show you how I save. She had a stall in the marketplace, and her house was very nearby. She said, come to my house. And we went to her house, and the house was under lock. She had the lock, and she was wearing the keys to unlock the house. We went into the house. She made us sit in the living room, and she went to her bedroom, and she brought back this. And this is how Rose saved. She had this huge bag of money that she had been saving and storing in her bedroom. And she said to us, that money, I am gathering it because I want to buy a car. So the things that she was putting in that bag was to buy a car. But also, she said, I need money for emergencies. So for emergencies, she had a locksmith make a lock where she put money. And then she also, saved in saving groups. So she had not gone to the bank. Imagine she had been saving all her life, and obviously she was very mindful of the way she was saving. But what an inefficient and dangerous way of saving, right? I mean, she could be robbed. I mean, she could lose all her savings in 1 minute. Unfortunately, this is what happens to a lot of women. And I don't know if you know, there is There's a very well-known financial inclusion survey that the World Bank does, that is an international survey, FINDEX. FINDEX has been seeing over the year, there are now three iterations of FINDEX, 2011, 2015, and 2017, or 2011, 14, and 17. Turns out that the gender gap in access to bank accounts has not budged one bit. The gender gap in developing countries is 9 percentage points, and that has not changed. Although account ownership has gone up for both men and women, the gender gap has not. So obviously, there is an issue still, there's a gender gap issue in terms of women being able to have a reliable source for bank services and for savings. So let me just go back. So this is the two studies that we did, and it's a multi-partner study. We tested the power of mobile savings and business training for women entrepreneurs in Indonesia and in Tanzania. I want to acknowledge again, the funders, the ExxonMobil Foundation, the Australian government, and the Umbrella Facility for Gender Equality at the World Bank, my colleagues at the World Bank, my colleagues at JPAL. I want to also acknowledge very, very importantly, one of the principal investigators of the study, Pak Furman Whitler. He unfortunately cannot be here with us today, but he played an incredible role in gathering the data. And I also want to acknowledge Survey Meter, who did a wonderful job in gathering the data for this study. So thank you so much to Furman, and thank you so much to Survey Meter. So let me just I will end this introduction with telling you a bit about the study. Oops. It's not moving? There, sorry, okay. A bit about who were the people that we studied. And it was a randomized, so these are the results from the baseline data. It's a randomized sample of men and women entrepreneurs, micro-entrepreneurs, in East Java, in 4 kabupatens in East Java. And this is before the interventions. This was the differences between the men and the women entrepreneur. The average monthly entrepreneur profits from all the sources in East Java in 2017, you will see that the first one is primary and secondary business profits, other income, and total earned income. The red is men, the blue is women. You can see that there is men earn on average on a monthly basis at least twice as much from the businesses than women do. So there's huge differences in the earnings from the businesses. Savings, however, in the last 12 months, as share of annualized average monthly income, you will see that while men on average save more, the average is 8.6 million rupiah, men save over 12 months versus 5.9 million rupiah for women. But when you take it as a share of the income that the people earn, you see that women save significantly more than men. So there's almost, women in the total, women save 39, this is the share of annualized earnings, they save 39% of their earnings, while men save only 27% of their earnings. So obviously, Indonesia, I think, confirms that women do prefer to save. They earn less than men, but they save more. Now, what we did also is we figured out, well, what explains all these differences in profits between men and women-owned businesses? What we were able to do, because it was such a large sample size, on average, women had smaller businesses, but we were able to match the samples of men and women and get it such a way that we matched women and men businesses with the same characteristics. And what we find out, that when you match people, men and women with the same characteristics, the same attributes, the same business assets, you still have, even when they're matched, you still have a significant gap, gender gap in earnings, which means that even if we increased women's education and women's business assets, there would still be a significant gap in earnings, which means that there's something in the environment that is taking this into account, that there's something maybe in the environment of the business that people work at that is discriminating against women. We did the same thing, and with this I will finish. We also matched on characteristics to reduce gender differentials in accessing information technology and say financial services, owning a smartphone, use the phone to access the internet, has a bank account in a known name, and took out loans in the last 12 months. And when you match men and women on these characteristics, there still is a gender gap that is not explainable by the attributes of the businessmen. So clearly there's something going on that is either norms or discrimination that is affecting women's businesses. And that was a big motivation for the study. And then I turn it to Hillary Johnson, I think, that will present the study.
Thank you very much, Mayra. I'm pleased to present now the study design and the results of the study. So in 2014, OJK, the Indonesian Financial Services Authority, issued a regulation creating branchless banking services. So the Laku Pandai offers financial services using digital technology and local agents. So instead of having to go all the way to a bank branch in order to access formal financial service products, now individuals can go to a local shop where there is a registered agent who can help them. So they can register for an account and they can do basic transactions such as deposits and withdrawals. So it brings formal banking services much closer to where individuals are living, which can be particularly important for women if they face greater mobility constraints or greater time constraints that make it difficult to access the formal banking services. So we are studying the Laku Pandai products, and we offer different interventions to try to promote the basic savings accounts under Laku Pandai. So what did we do? We offered both supply-side incentives and demand-side incentives in order to promote these types of savings products. On the supply side, we trained and mentored branchless banking agents to know how to use the product, but also to know how to promote the product, and with a focus on the importance of promoting the products to female entrepreneurs. In addition to training and mentoring for the agents, there were financial incentives. So for each additional client that the agent signs up for the product, they receive a financial incentive. They also receive incentives for withdrawal and deposit transactions to thank them for their time. On the demand side, we offered training and mentoring for female entrepreneurs. The training lasted 3 hours on average, and it covered a range of topics, things like financial and business literacy. There was a huge emphasis on the importance of savings, and also an introduction to digital financial services, so these agent banking products, which were explained to the women. And after this 3-hour training session, there were 3 group mentoring sessions of about an hour, hour and a half each. And that was in order to enable the women to come with their questions, to reinforce the lessons that they learned, to really make sure that they understood how to put in practice the skills that they had learned in the training. And in a few minutes, Glory will present the training in more detail so that you'll get a really good picture of what all was taught. So we worked in 400 villages, where in all 400 villages, the branchless banking agents were trained and mentored. In approximately half of these villages, the agents received the normal incentives, which are 2,000 rupiah per client that they sign up for the product. However, in the other half of the villages, those incentives were increased by 5 times. So instead of 2,000 rupiah for each client that was signed up, the agents would receive 10,000 rupiah for each client they signed up. The idea behind this is that if there's a greater financial incentive, perhaps the agents would put in more effort to promote the product. Maybe instead of waiting for people to come to them, they may become more proactive, going out into the community to talk to people for whom the products could be relevant. Then we identified female entrepreneurs and male entrepreneurs in the village, that there was a listing exercise to figure out who are entrepreneurs in each of these villages. And once we had identified the entrepreneurs, we trained a little over half of the entrepreneurs. So 56% of the women were randomly assigned to receive the training and mentoring that I spoke about just briefly from Mercy Corps. So there's that 3-hour training session followed by 3 mentoring sessions. So this design of the study allows us to compare the impacts of business as usual, where there's an agent that comes into the village but is receiving the normal incentives. We compare that with cases where the agents are receiving high incentives, so we can see the impact of the high incentives by themselves. We can also see the impact of the training by itself, so the impact on entrepreneurs who received the training in the low incentive villages. And finally, we can see the interaction between the two, so that we can see the impacts of the program when agents were receiving high incentives and when the women had received the training and mentoring. A little bit more about the sample. The study took place in 5 kabupaten in East Java, in Tuban, Bojonegoro, Niawi, Lamongan, and Gresik. Our sample on average of female entrepreneurs were 38 years old on average, and largely a rural population. Only 12% of the female entrepreneurs were living in urban areas. 37% have a smartphone, and 59% know the branchless banking agent of the partner bank that we were working with. So a fair number of individuals actually know the agent in the village. 48% of women had a bank account registered in their name. So roughly half of the entrepreneurs already had some sort of banking product. However, regular use was lower than this. On average, the women had these businesses for a fairly long time. So these were not new businesses. 60% of the sample had started their primary business more than 5 years ago. So the average business age was actually 8 years. So these were experienced business owners who had these businesses on average for quite some time. However, they were very small businesses. Only 8% of them had any paid workers. So we're talking about micro businesses. So now turning to the results. Clicker will work. We see that the business training and mentoring increased greatly the knowledge of branchless banking products. So awareness of branchless banking products in general rose, the number of women aware of digital financial services doubled during the study period. And we see that awareness of the partner bank's Laku Pandai product increased by 43 percentage points, which is a very large increase given that in the control group only 4% of women were aware of these products. However, the impacts on the use, although statistically significant, we see the orange bar that there's some stars, which means that there's some statistically significant impacts, but in practical terms, they were actually quite low. Only 2% of women who were trained were actually using and registering the products. So, although it did lead to some increase over the control group on the use of the products, that use is somewhat low. When we turn to the impacts on savings, however, we see that there's a large increase in savings. So the blue bars shows the percentage increase of savings compared to the control group of the women who received the training and mentoring only, and the orange bar shows the increase in savings compared to the control group of women who received training and mentoring in areas with high agent incentives. So we see on average that the training and mentoring led to an increase between 13 and 15% in the amount that women were saving. This is roughly 300,000 rupiah over the course of 12 months. So the training and mentoring increased the amount that women were saving. It also increased their capital. When we look at the business assets, which is the graph on the right-hand side, we see also that the total value of the assets in the businesses also increased by between 13 and 15% after the training and mentoring. So women were saving. Part of that savings was going into capital, although some of that capital may have been coming from other sources as well. We also see, in addition to saving more and investing in the business, we also see that women are adopting good business practices. We see that compared to the control group, women who were trained and mentored increased the percentage of 16 good business practices that they use. There's between an 8 and a 12% increase in the number of good business practices they use. Notably, they're more likely to be asking suppliers what products are selling well in their domain. So they're interested in figuring out how they can sell more. They're also increasing their record-keeping practices, separating personal and business money, and being able to use the accounts that they're keeping to understand how much money they have on hand. So these are all things that had been covered in the training, and they're implementing those practices. So that's another way that the program is leading to improved business management. We see that these increases and improvements led to a statistically significant increase in the profits of women's businesses. So the first column shows the average profits of women in the control group. So those where the agents were receiving low incentives and there was not training or mentoring. And we see on average, for the control group, the profits were 1.3 million rupiah over the past 12 months. And the difference between that first bar and the other bars is the impact of the program. We see that the high agent incentives alone, so not combined with the training and mentoring, led to a 12% increase in women's profits. The training and mentoring, either alone or combined with the agent incentives, led to a 15% increase in the profits of women's businesses. So we see that not only was the training and mentoring increasing the savings, increasing the capital, improving the business practices, we also see that it's increasing women's profits. The agent incentives also is increasing women's profits. But not only is it increasing women's earnings, it's also increasing their agency and the well-being of their household. So we see that the training and mentoring alone, that there's an increase in women's decision-making authority in the household. In particular, when we decompose what they're making decisions on, we see that women are having a greater say in purchasing of household assets, in whether or not to save, and in whether or not to sign up for a new banking product. So the training and mentoring is empowering women not only through increasing their earnings, but also by helping them have a greater say in the household over finances and purchasing decisions. Perhaps not surprisingly, given that there were impacts on the profits, we see that the training and mentoring also led to an increase in household durable assets. So women in the training and mentoring increased the assets in their household. So this has impacts not only for women's businesses and for women's agency, but also impacts on the whole household. So when we think about how things were working, the business training and mentoring increased women's profits and their welfare, and this seems to be coming through different channels. So on the one hand, they're improving their business practices, and the literature shows that improved business practices is linked with improved profits. We see also that women are increasing their savings. This can support their business through two ways. On the one hand, it can help them invest in their business. On the other, it can also help them either seek financing externally, or it can help act as a buffer when there's a shock, that they do not have to deplete their business assets or their working capital. They can use their savings to weather any shocks. We see also that there's an increase in the investments of the business, which can help the businesses grow as we see the increased profits. And finally, the decision-making authority is also something that can help improve the businesses. So we see that the training and mentoring had impacts on the profits, had impacts on household welfare, and that this seems to be coming through many channels. The high agent incentives, on the other hand, increased profits. To be honest, we're not exactly sure what the mechanisms were behind it. We have a few different theories. On the one hand, the agents had been trained on the importance of promoting these products to female entrepreneurs. And so perhaps that combined with the incentives created a signal of a woman-friendly business environment. So that might be one way. Another way is perhaps it's coming through greater cooperation within the household. We didn't have time to present on all of the findings of the study, but we saw that the high agent incentives increased men's use of the product and increased their savings, but it did not lead to a statistically significant impact on the profits of men's businesses. At the same time, women were sharing more information with their spouses in the high incentive villages about their earnings. So perhaps the impacts could be coming through different channels, through greater cooperation in the household, greater financial inclusion more broadly that's leading to investments in women's businesses. Perhaps also women are investing the savings that they already had in their business. But we're still doing more digging on this. So this study has a lot more analysis ongoing on the supply side. So digging into the Asian incentives, how they were working. And we recently received administrative data from the partner bank that's allowing us to look at the impacts of the Asian incentives in much more detail. So please stay tuned for additional results on that side, and hopefully that will elucidate what is going on here and how the agent incentives are leading to greater profits. We find that when you compare the increase in profits with the cost of the program, we find that all of the interventions offered are highly cost effective. So the benefits of the increased profits highly outweigh the costs of the programs. We see that the high agent incentives are more cost effective than the training and mentoring alone. This is due to the fact that the costs are limited to training and mentoring one individual, which of course is less expensive than training multiple individuals. However, we think that there could still be rationale for wanting to invest in the demand side. On the one hand, we talked about the empowerment impacts that we saw previously, but we also see that the training and mentoring, when we look at the impacts by different groups of women, we see that the training and mentoring had greater impacts for the poorest women. So women from the lowest socioeconomic backgrounds had the greatest impacts on their profits, but also on their capital investments and on their savings and on the household welfare. So the training and mentoring can be an effective way of reaching some of the poorest women. So the study has found that relatively short business and financial literacy training can improve business outcomes for female entrepreneurs. As Mayra mentioned, there is mixed evidence in the literature on business training, and one of the reasons that we think that this program was so successful was that it was very tailored to the needs of the female entrepreneurs, and it was very practical. It was a well-designed and well-implemented training that focused on the practical details and also on the importance of savings. And so when Glory comes up in a few minutes, she'll be able to explain how the program was developed, how it was implemented, and provide more details on if you're interested in doing this sort of thing in the future, what lessons can you take away for doing so. So in addition to seeing that the training and mentoring improved the business outcomes of female entrepreneurs, we see that increased savings and improved business practices seem to be channels through which this is coming. Finally, as we see that there's impacts on women's decision making and on the household assets, we conclude that smart investments in women's businesses improves their welfare and also the welfare of their households more broadly. So with that, I will turn it over to Glory to come and tell you a little bit more about the training and mentoring program.
Thank you, Hillary. Apparently, there's a technical glitch just a bit. I have to wait for new batteries. Fingers crossed. Okay. Bismillah. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Good morning everyone, selamat pagi, salam sejahtera. Thank you for coming today. I'm Glory from Mercy Corps Indonesia, and I would like to share the work that we do and also some of the lessons learned that we take away from this. This is quite a collaborative project with a lot of different partners. As you know, JPAL Southeast Asia as our ground research partner in the field, Mayra Buvinic from CGD, those who are really coordinating all the principal investigators, and of course Hillary as part of this research and funders, of course, ExxonMobil Foundation, our donors under this Women Economic Opportunity Initiative, and not to mention, of course, Surveymeter, our survey partner that really do this rigorous work and data. So I would just go ahead and slightly a bit, I would like to introduce Mercy Corps Indonesia. We are currently an Indonesian foundation. Yes, we are part of the global family of Mercy Corps. Currently we're working in 10 provinces in Indonesia, varies from economic development, market development, climate change adaptation, disaster reduction, and recently we also work in an emergency response and recovery program in Palu. So our program, we call it internally, so if you are listening to this, researchers, very scientific, so please bear with me, this is typically NGO kind of explanation. So we call this Mobile Financial Services for Female Entrepreneurs, MFS in short. So this program, like Hillary been elaborated earlier, it aims to identify a cost-effective and sustainable approach to promoting uptake of mobile financial services, particularly savings, by female entrepreneurs as one of the way to increase women's investment in and from their businesses. The project is designed with a vision of bolstering financial inclusion for Indonesian women entrepreneurs by taking advantage of the current or recent development in the banking sector, which have led to several branches banking initiatives, presenting a unique opportunity for making financial services more accessible to the unbanked population. So slightly, Hillary already been mentioning that this project is a testing or pilot set intervention using RCT or randomized control trial, targeting the agent on the supply side and female entrepreneurs on the demand side in East Java, in 5 districts. So ultimately, this pilot aims to identify a business model that can be adopted and scaled up, hopefully to reach out furthermore or 1,000 more female entrepreneurs throughout the country. And now, please bear with me, a lot of numbers and steps. So, because this is an RCT, so Mercy Corps Indonesia is learning how to be versatile about this. We have to learn how to think scientifically in a very rigorous step and method as the scientist. So before we just jump into the training and doing the regular needs assessment, community development kind of stuff, we have to follow through some of the steps. So first we have to identify the agents in these 5 districts. So basically we need 400 agents, 1 agent per villages. So the statistic will do. So we have to visit at least more than 1,000 villages to get that agents. And then at the same time, we develop the training module. We're improving it. Like here I also mentioned, for the agent side, we also include some of the part of how important it is for the agent to targeting women as the potential market of their services. And for the female entrepreneurs, Mercy Corps actually has been working on several different trainings before targeting female entrepreneurs also and financial literacy, so we have that in-house. And then we recruit the agent banking, and then we need to conduct training of trainers. This is also something that really critical because we don't have all the resources in-house, so we have to hire local talent to deliver the training. And this is not just a training, because this is some training which needs a uniformity in the steps. You cannot improvise in the training or delivery of the training. So it is also the challenge for the trainers. And then we need to verify and invite the female entrepreneurs. This is where Surveymeter as our survey partners come into the critical role because they are doing the baseline, and then they come to Mercy Corps with a bunch of lists, thousands of lists of women with green. Yes, you have to invite these women. It is mandatory. You cannot lose them. And then red, you must not invite these women. It's no, no. And then this is yellow. You probably can invite them, or probably not. Let's see. If the husband being surveyed, then you cannot invite them. So it's a bit confusing, yes? But yeah, we try to make that work. And trust me, we know none of them. So we don't know this population. We are new in the countries. So it is really a really meticulous and a rigorous task. So then we do the training of this agent and the female entrepreneurs. 400 and 2,000, that's the target. And then 3 times mentoring. Hillary been mentioning is training and mentoring, training and mentorings, and I'll explain later. And then we do project monitoring internally inside Mercy Corps, outside of just the baseline and midline and endline survey later on. And if you notice, in each step, there is a mini pilot. So in each step, we have to verify that this is sort of foolproof. We have to try it first. If it doesn't work, then we have to retry it. So it takes quite a time to make sure that this step is followed and will work in the study. So as an agency, in all our training, Mercy Corps Indonesia believes that one-time training will never work to create a good impact. We believe that there should be another follow-up activity or action in terms of mentoring, training, coaching to make sure that the subjects of the trainings are applicable or being applied by the participant. So here are the, it's a bit light. So these are the structure of the training. So as I mentioned, first there is a baseline survey and we got numbers, like more than 4,000 numbers of households being surveyed. And we have to invite this. And we call it that we have a list of these mandatory female entrepreneurs list that we have to make sure they've been invited and come to the training, no matter what. No matter what, they have to come to training. And then at the same time, we are training the more than 50 trainers in 2 different groups. One trainers are being trained on the subject of agent banking, and the other being trained on the female entrepreneurs on financial literacy and business management. And then after that, the team is recruiting the agent. At the same time, the agent training have to go first. Like Hillary also mentioned, I think the average time for this training is like 3 hours, and it is one-on-one, with 2 time mentoring with the interval of 1 week per session. Once the agent reaches the second mentoring, which we assume that by then the agent already got the knowledge and the confidence to explain about what they can do with the business or the products or the services, then we invite the female entrepreneurs to come into the class. So this agent in one village, they will have one group of female entrepreneurs from 5 to 7, some also 7. So basically 4 female entrepreneurs are mandatory, like plus extra 1 to get these 2,000 female entrepreneurs being trained. So we make sure that they are invited into the training, and then on the last bit, this is like 2,352 is the numbers that we recorded, that these are just the numbers of the female entrepreneurs that come to the first training, only the first training. So we lost around 2,000 female entrepreneurs that are on the mandatory list. Sorry, 200. Yeah, so, and that's really matter. It is critical for us, and what should we do about it? We have to chase them. We have to make sure the training is happening. So the team creating an individual or like one-on-one, 1-on-3 or something like that session to make sure this mandatory list of female entrepreneurs are being trained. For the others, it's not so much of a hassle because we can put the numbers in other group, in other villages or so. So the interval between the training and mentoring is around 10 days. That's the ideal. But honestly, at the end of the project, we are running out of time. So sometimes we have to push back until the 10 or 7 days, even before 10 days. Why mentoring is required? Because it is less likely for the participant to get the knowledge or apply the knowledge just for one training. It will not work, we know that. And then it will provide them room to ask questions, to follow up, to learn from their peers, and to learn from their own business case. So this is how important it is to make sure they understand and apply the subject. Oops, sorry. Okay, the training subject on this financial literacy and business management. So basically we have this financial management, the concept of it, very basic. Even though this is in English, trust me, ladies and gentlemen, we created the model is very simple word in average of like junior high school students kind of understanding. But it's still sometimes too difficult. So also we introduce them on the saving, the concept of saving. What's mind-blowing about saving? Saving is not about leftovers, but about putting aside some money upfront. And then on the technical part is around financial planning and bookkeeping, and then on financial business management, it's more into those who are going to sort of scale up their business. And the most importantly, we also introduce them to the product and services of the branchless banking, so they are aware. On the bottom side, there are some of the method and forms and tools that we use. And then on the mentoring subject, sorry. It is? Okay. So on the mentoring subject, we basically review or deepening the three most, we think is the most important subject of the training. So in financial business management, it's more like a technical thing. So they have this, if you see the background here, this is the women entrepreneurs in Ngawi. So they work with big banner and they can fill in the numbers. So we try in themselves with their own business case. So they can apply it directly based on their business. Each one is like having different method, like tools, but it is very interactive and it is very, actually it's very demanding for them because sometimes they will not come to the next session because they haven't done the homework, and that's sad. Here they are. This is very famous picture actually, one of our favorite. Okay, the feedback. So, interestingly, most of the women said that all of these subjects are moderately easy or moderately hard. I'm not really sure. It's moderate. It's not too easy, it's not too hard. But if you're noticing, the easiest subject that they think is, among the others, is saving. So saving as the highest percentage, like 36%, are the easiest among the other subjects. And then, the subject that also most interesting to them and relevant is only saving. So it's not just as easiest, it is the most relevant and interesting for them to learn, apparently. They don't like working on homeworks, I know, but then, yeah, this is just showed it. More than 50%. And then we asked them if the subjects are applicable, so this is the result. And again, most of them say that, 30% say that, like, yes, it is doable. Saving is applicable. Okay, this is the challenges that we have in the technical things. First are the trainers. honestly, working in 5 different districts in East Java is not, we thought it's not quite that hard. But then, along the way, we have a lot of numbers of attrition from the trainers, the local trainers. Some of it because they don't have the what you call it, the motivation, or even the way that we do the training is regulated in a certain way because it's in our city, so it is sometimes too hard for them. So they cannot, improvise or things like that. It should be very accommodated with the schedule and everything, so it's a bit hard for them. But then again, we advertise, we try to gather local talent. So we don't have trainers coming from outside of the province, so we try really to harness the local talents. This is also one part of the capacity building of the local talent. And then the attendance. We also have substantial attrition numbers. Well, that's not really bad actually, but for the mandatory participant, it is quite concerning. So like I said before, we have to really chase them and create a separate training to make sure they are in the training. And then the participant in the earlier batch. So because this is something that required literacy, honestly, and they have to have the mobile phone to to conduct the training. In earlier batches, we found that some of the participants are illiterate, they cannot read or write. So we didn't know until they come to the training. So this quite created a problem. So the suggestion that actually JPAL team was suggested that you have to ask somebody from the household to accompany these women and make sure that they can continue the study. But from the experience, they all withdraw at the end. So, and the next batches, we make sure that this is not happening again. So what makes the training works? What makes them coming and keep coming and learning? First, ask permission from the spouses, the husband, the family members is important, and explain all the information about the training. Some things around that we don't give any money, that we don't give them access to loan, no. Nothing. We just give them this knowledge and in return of their time. And then invite the literate woman. That's critical. It seems simple, but it's not, because it's creating setting the moods of the trainers. We have this experience when one woman couldn't really follow the training and she was kind of inferior, and the whole class was uneasy. It was sad. So the training didn't go well. So it is important to make sure that they are at at least the same capacity or criteria. Agreed on the time of the activity is also important. We've been facing through a lot of different time of Ramadan, and it's so hard to get ibu-ibu coming out to sit down while it's about to buka puasa, yes? So it is very critical to make sure that they agree on the time, because we are not going to make sure make sure that their households are okay. I mean, we're not creating problem for them. And then committed trainers. Trust is the key. Having the same trainers training the same group are important. There are several cases where the attrition of the trainers are happening, so we have to fill in with our team member. It's okay, it works, but sometimes it's demotivated the group a little bit. So, what should we improve if you want to make some kind of programming like this? That topics, that subjects are a lot for them. We have a lot of feedback saying that, we are overwhelming. Yeah, we know that, but I don't think we need that. So for Mercy Corps, I think it's important to focus on specific topic or subjects for training. For instance, now we carry on with the funding of ExxonMobil Foundation. We also carry on a scale-up program that focusing on saving behaviors and certain part of financial literacy. Only 2 big subjects, and then connect them with this agent banking. That works better, inshallah, God willing. We haven't got the study released yet. And then connect these female entrepreneurs with the agent banking to ensure usage or active savings. Like yes, they are saving, they're interested in saving, but they are not yet make a connection to go to the agent, or even the agent approaching these women and the women opening an account, a formal account in the agent. Correct me if I'm wrong, Hillary, but I think that's not really happening yet that much, right? So the connection between the female entrepreneurs and the agent is important. And then digital financial literacy training requests another specific setting. So financial literacy is one thing, digital literacy is another thing. So you can assume that ask ibu-ibu to come with their phone and bam, you can just do it in one shot. I don't think it's not going to happen. So needs assessment is very critical. So, this last bit. Ibu Wiwi in Bojonegoro, she owns a coffee shop. What she learned is very simple. She can differentiate the needs and the wants. Usually women thinks everything is the wants or the needs, right? But then she understands that. And she also understands that it's important to put aside some money for saving at first and exactly know how much the expenses are. That's also important. But what's important and interesting to me in this story is because she asked her husband to come in a monthly discussion about their planning. So she influenced the husband to be involved in this setting of financial management in their household. So lastly for us, financial inclusion is more than just creating the access to the available or existing financial services and products. But more importantly, we have to include everyone, not just the women, in terms of the education and literacy process. This is to ensure that these women will obtain a significant improvement in their economics, because once they improve their economics, it's not just for her, but for her family, and for sure for the whole community. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. I'm supposed to talk about the policy implications. I will be very brief because I think that we want you to now ask questions and give us comments. So, you know, in terms of the policy implications, the one thing that I would say is let's hire Mercy Corps, right? I mean, that, you know, that seems, but it's obviously that this training combined with promotion of savings worked. I mean, and it had all these very good ripple effects. I mean, it empowered women, it increased their profits, and increased household welfare for what is more or less a reasonably moderate investment. So I think that, you know, that is something that, I mean, if we can pinpoint what is working, and I would love to hear from you, what are your views in terms of what may be working here, but clearly business practices mattered, the access to savings and capital matter a lot, and the role of agency made a big difference. So I think if you're doing training programs, combining them with promotion of savings and access to financial services is very important. As Hillary was saying, we don't know really what was going on the supply side. Maybe a more friendly business environment has something to do. Maybe there is something in terms of husbands providing, you know, capital to the women to invest. Maybe the women were using their savings. So we would really like to find out from you, what are your views on what you think the research showed and what are the mechanisms. And I think that there I would like to turn it over. And I don't know how we're going to take questions, but I suppose if you raise your hand, And if you can introduce yourself, that would be great. And I imagine we'll have microphones to pass around. Yeah. So, you're the first, second, third. Okay. So let's take 2 or 3 questions, and then we'll come back to the panelists.
Thank you very much for the opportunity. Good morning, everybody, ladies and gentlemen, and honorable resource persons. My name is Eri. I come from Yayasan Bina Swadaya. We call it, our organization is the social enterprise. We have as well managed the microfinance in spread mostly in the Java area with around more than 600 of the nasabah members of the, we use the cooperative approach to the microfinance. This is very interesting tema that you shared, particularly about how the technology can improve the better economic empowerment. Most of the study, I agree with this, and then. And what I want to know, actually, about the sustainability of the project itself. The concept of this research make 2 assumptions, or some assumptions that I catch from your presentations. At the first, that the poorest that you identified mostly have the smartphone, yeah, and comparing to my experience, that the poorest that we have in our microfinancing mostly doesn't have the smartphone. They have only the handphone, or mostly they don't have the kind of the digital tools. Yeah. So that means there is still another level of the poor that needs as well the financial inclusion. So this is, we have to think about this for another group of women who doesn't have these digital tools. And then the second assumptions that you used is about the agent. The agent that you use, mostly you are recruited from the crowd, while you don't use the institutional agent like the microfinances and then or the lembaga keuangan mikro that mostly as well provided, or the koperasi simpan pinjam, which mostly as well a lot and closely related to support the financial inclusions. So therefore, I'm asking about the sustainability, because from your presentations it shows the important role of the training and mentoring to have to get the improving of the saving. But how can you continue this model while you approach the agent mostly from as individuals, not as the institutions. To my opinion, if you use the institutional agents, so you would have more exit strategy to extend the role, the capacity building, and so on. Another questions about the profit. You said that most of the women that you approach and get the training has improved their profit. To my experience, this is again, the assumptions that you use is mostly the individual saving. In our approach, we are using the group approach. We are using the cooperative that we built what we call it the KSM, kelompok swadaya masyarakat, the small groups, so that we give loan to the groups rather than to individuals. And in my experience, more than 60% of the women that we approach has improved not only the profit but as well the assets. So my questions to your study is, that means you are measuring the profit only during the, might be, I don't know how long this project has been running, 1 or 2 years. While in our experience, we can measuring the asset is more than 5 years of the memberships they're gathering into our corporations, then we can see that not only the profit we can measure, but as well the asset. Because you know, in our experience managing the microfinances, yeah, mostly in the first or second years, they mostly they need the loan mostly in the time before the children are going to school. Yeah? So we can see that the poverty, actually the business of the woman mostly are very fragile, depending on the macro situations. So.
Okay. Thank you. You have there are about 3 questions already.
Okay, I'm sorry. Maybe. Thank you. I think I will limit it to this.
Let's get another couple of questions or comments, and then we'll go back.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you very
Thank you
much.
so much.
Yeah, because of very interesting your tema is. Thank you, ma'am.
I've written at least 3 questions. I think you had more. Who wants to? We had hands here. Yes, please.
Thank you for the opportunity and the invitation. My name is Rina from UAPI, Ikatan Wanita Pengusaha Indonesia, and also I'm in the Department for Women Empowerment in Kadin. This is very interesting study because the problems, the mission, the endline, the study also aligns with our vision to promote full financial inclusion and so to improve business practice and access to capital and savings. Thank you very much for sharing this. Our members spread out nationwide in 33 provinces. So this kind of studies, we would like to cooperate together with our organization if we make and be practice, because I think the first question is very interesting, how to sustain and how to practice, because we have the lesson learned here about all these problems and how matters deal with the women in the East Java. So maybe different provinces, different area, maybe different problems as well, but really we are interested if we can, this kind of study or this kind of practice can be applied in our members nationwide to promote the financial inclusion. The other question is how we can accountable with the agent if the agent will not run away with all this money. So to make sure this agent really accountable, if they are individual, make sure the agent is accountable for that. So how we can proceed that, because that's this is hard-earned money. So from all these women, in order that we can save all this money. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Do we have maybe another one? Yes.
Okay, thank you. My name is Wurda Ningsi. You can call me Ningsi. I'm from Agriculture University IPB Bogor. Yeah. My question is, I see from your research that this is only for women who has business already. Yeah. The assumption is they have already knowledge because maybe the business is heritage from the family business in the rural area or the village. But your title is inclusive, but in your research, you didn't include that woman who wants to start up their business, or they want to start the business, but they don't know how to. But if the women have business already, no wonder there will be booster their knowledge and their profit, because they already know. Because maybe the fathers, their family relatives already start the business. But what we want to help is the woman who hasn't had the business yet. That's the first. And the second one is, yes, we have in the village or the rural area, we have right now Badan Usaha Milik Desa. In every village, they start build already the Badan Usaha Milik Desa. They have a financing, but mostly of them doesn't know how to be the entrepreneur, how to develop their business in this village. So the policy implication has nothing to do with the program right now the government start to develop, like Badan Usaha Milik Desa, like village state-owned enterprises. Second, thank you.
Maybe we can answer yes. You are very right. The women and the men in the study are people who already have enterprises, and that was, we could not encompass everybody. And the focus was on trying to get these entrepreneurs already there with very, very small business, trying to see what works for them, right? And that's what the ExxonMobil Foundation has been doing for quite some time. So so it's not covering people who do not have businesses and are trying to get into have businesses. Do you want maybe the comment on the agents, or? Yeah. You have, I think, I don't think. Right.
Okay, thank you for the questions. I think I can answer the assumption on the agent first from Ibu Eli dari Yayasan Bina Swadaya. Yes, the agent that we are recruiting are individuals. However, actually we are partnering with a bank in Indonesia. So the institutional legal formal are there. So these agents are basically supported by this institution. So we are not randomly selected people who just have business, because we have this criteria from OJK, right? Certain years of business, this facility, and. So basically we are partnering with this bank, and then they're providing us with potential list of entrepreneurs or business owners who can be approached to be an agent. And in terms of sustainability, I believe we also conduct TOT to the field staff of the bank. So hopefully this will carry over, because at the end, even though now we can see, Mercy Corps doesn't really work there anymore. So the field staff are the one who are managing and retaining the agents and capacity build or do troubleshooting in every day time. So that's what happens. So sorry, we are really focusing on the demand side. We didn't really discussing on the supply side. That's why the assumptions came up, I think.
Thank you. Thank you very much for the interest and for the questions. I wanted to come back a little bit to the timing, and apologies, I should have presented on the timeline of the study. So the baseline data collection took place in the first half of 2017, and the interventions took place soon thereafter. The end-line data was collected about a year after the training and mentoring had been received, so towards the end of 2018. So the impacts that we're looking at are about a year out. This is fairly common in these types of studies. I think it's wonderful when it's possible to measure the impacts even longer out, to see to what extent there's sustained, even 5 years after, such as what you were talking about. Given the timing, though, and the funding restrictions, it wasn't possible yet to do this, but perhaps maybe in the future. And then I wanted to also come back to the smartphone usage. So only 37% of the sample actually has smartphones. So while some of the individuals certainly do, it's not universal. So I think it is important to reach individuals kind of throughout the spectrum, both those that have less access, but then also those who do have access. The impacts can be different, and as we saw, actually, the impacts were greater on those from a poorer background, which I find quite encouraging, actually.
More questions, comments? Yeah, you and you, and in the back, 3. We'll take 3.
Hi, good morning. Thank you so much for your presentation. It's been very helpful. I work on national development, but specifically focusing on women and underrepresented groups through digital empowerment. And I understand one of your research actually stated that you had difficulty in digital literacy, and that is something that I'm very much focused on right now in our programs. And I wanted to know, how did you actually approach that in your training? Was that, I understand, as part of the improvements, you would like it to have potentially a separate training, but how did you integrate that in the existing program that you did? Did you have to retrain, for example, your trainers? Did you have to have an additional module that impacted on the cost itself of the program? And what were maybe, I don't know, a ballpark number that you saw had improved their ability to use technology to improve their skills and, of course, increasing their profit and, of course, savings? Thank you.
Great. The other question we had here? Okay. Yeah, let's go there, but there was somebody here too. You.
Okay, good morning. I'm Adu Masito from Save the Children. So Save the Children also have same investments on the empowering the local community, including women, for in terms of financial literacy and economic investment as well. So my question is, first is, I'm really concerned about the sustainability itself, because from your presentations that it shows that the first is, I didn't see really about the acceptance of all the environment to support women to start the business initiatives. So, for example, the acceptance of, in terms of the gender gap, for example, how the husband, for example, can accept when women raise this concern, besides take caring of their family, baby, but also another side to invest their effort in starting the new business. I didn't see that. And then the second one is about how actually all this approach is not really targeting all the women, because let's see, the community in the rural area with the limited access, for example, to the internet, mobile, and then also mostly like the women with very low education. So how actually, my concern here is like this approach not really targeting to them as well, and is also not really able to attract like young women to start the business, decide themselves to stay in the village and start the business, because for example, all the environment not really able to support them, including how to access the capital. Thank you.
Thank you. Do we have another one? Another question? Yes.
Hello, my name is Diana. On behalf of Internet Governor Forum of Indonesia. Actually, my question is just about the same to Ibu, the last Ibu. It's about internet because we are internet governor. How this program, which is Ibu Glory mentioned about financial and digital, is different, right? In this program. And I would like to asking, how do you maintain the digital learning to a rural women? Also, how do you maintaining the internet and teaching them about internet, especially in a banking system? As it is, all I see the theme is about inclusion mobile financial services. That's all my question. Thank you.
Okay, you know, again, I think that your question, this does not cover all women, and you know, the sample is restricted to business women and businessmen, you know, within certain ages, 18 to 55. So unfortunately, we were not able to cover women who were not in business and want to enter business, or older women, you know, those were outside the scope of the study. I mean, but you know, this is a majority. I mean, the majority of enterprises in Indonesia are female-led, and they're mostly very, very small enterprises. So this is a substantial proportion of the businesses in Indonesia. If you raise the income of these women's enterprises, it can have incredible positive effects for families and the economy. I will turn, Gloria, do you want to answer the question on literacy and the internet?
Yeah, I think that going to tie together on the digital literacy approach. That's why I learned something about it is two different things, to teach these women on financial literacy and digital literacy and digital financial literacy. We just learned about it when this completed, actually. So when we're talking about these women entrepreneurs, don't imagine ibu-ibu with catering business, yes. This is ibu-ibu that sell belimbing, has suffered in the market in the village. So it's like micro envelope. So that the feature phone, they don't even use it for internet. Some of them doesn't have internet access. But for the sake of this project, we have to sort out, we have to look for the women who already at least get access to the internet, even though it's a feature phone. And just to combine the thing, the infrastructure we're talking about is Java. It's not all there good, trust me. Our team coming from village to village, really trying to get the signal. 4G, 3G, no G, whatever G. That's literally what we did the first 3 months. So we have to make sure that we can try this project and all the infrastructure are there. So it's not that simple, even though it looks simple. So that's how we learn. From this project, we learned that teaching financial literacy and using it through the mobile to access some of the services of the banking agent is two different things. The mobile phone is very small. Some of them are very old, so they can't even push the right button. So it's challenging for them. It's frustrating for them. So we, in other programs that we did after this on the scale-up training, we chose not to combine the two just yet. We try to focus on the saving behavior first, and we connect them with the agent banking. With the help of this agent banking, so these women will get the financial services. The technology, the digital, the SMS banking, yes, we have it in our module. We train them to push like this button, this asterisk 111, hashtag whatever number. We did that, yes, piece by piece. Not everyone can follow through though. So that's the challenge. So this is actually the learning, the takeaway that I share with you and whomever wanted to move forward with this, that the infrastructure is something, and also the knowledge together is another thing. So it is something that that's not just an idea and an idea, but you have to really try to combine it seamlessly to make sure it works. Because in the field, it's not that simple, actually.
I think the only thing I would add is that this is also why the mentoring is so important. Because the mentoring provided an opportunity to revisit the concepts. And after you'd gone home and you'd tried to do things and maybe failed, you could come back and say, these are the experiences I had, these are the challenges I faced, and the trainer's there to help coach you through it so that through time and practice, you can reinforce this message and really support women in becoming more digitally literate and able to use these types of products.
Okay, great. Thank you. More questions, comments? Yes. And I have a question for you also. You know, the one sort of the one issue that we have really very little answer is what happened in that condition where the agents had incentives, but you know, but we don't know, was it, how did the women in that condition, they did not have training, but they increased their profits somewhat. Is it that they borrowed, that the husbands loaned them money? Is that something, I mean, are these really family businesses versus women-only businesses? Or is it that maybe women use their own savings? Or is it just that the environment became more friendly? We would love to hear from you. What are your thoughts on what are the mechanisms there? So anyway, but first, your question.
Hi, my name is Andrea from the Center for Indonesian Policy Studies. We're a policy think tank looking at national policies. Thank you again for sharing your really good research. My question is directly related to what you just mentioned. I wonder if you considered the proliferation of e-commerce platforms and these online marketplaces as the supply side that allowed women to gain more profits. Because for us at CIPS, we think that the latest policies that are creating, so now the government has released a policy where you have to register a business in order to sell online, and there's been a lot of confusion regarding around that regulation. And we see this as a real threat for women entrepreneurship and the opportunities women can have to increase their incomes, because that kind of regulation is basically crowding out the informal sector, especially women who dominate the informal sector. So I just like to know your thoughts on that.
Yeah,
Thank
we
you.
did not deal with that, definitely. Yes, and yes, two.
Hi, good morning everyone. My name is Sana. I am from MCRIL, which is a service provider in the field of financial inclusion. So I have a few questions. The first one regarding the decision-making power for the women participants. How did you define it? Given that in Glory's presentation, she talks about taking permission from the spouse as being one of the contributing success factors. So how did you did one of the questions indicators assessing women's decision-making power also take that into account? And secondly, so this comes from Hillary's and Glory's talking points. So there was, Hillary mentioned that even though the women's knowledge about the branchless banking increased, but it did not have an impact on the use. And Glory said that of the 5 modules that the participants were trained on, they saw savings as the most important. And this is coming from women who are empowered in the sense that they have their businesses, they're running a business, but they still did not see financial management, bookkeeping, etc. as important as savings, because that is what eventually leads to having savings in the first place. So how do you explain the discrepancy And also, what think will lead to increase in uptake of branchless banking? Is it relevant that the use has not increased? Is there some flaw, or do you have any comments on the design of the Laku Pandai assignment? And these are my questions and my comment. So, both businesswomen in the lowest 20% of income distribution benefited the most. I think that's really commendable for a program to have done that. Thank you.
Thank you for your questions. Very good one. Yeah, you have.
Okay, thank you. My name is Fitri from Association of Center for Women Resource Development, or PPSW. I have a question and also sharing for from our experience. In this study, did you analyze the contribution of a local group, like a cooperation or a peer-to-peer lending to the subject of your research? Because from our experience, we have the same similar situation. We have a program that financial education and also market access for adult women. So in 3 years program, they have increased for profit and also asset, like Mbak Eri said, because they get capital from the local institution, like a cooperation, also peer-to-peer lending. It's more comfortable for them to get the capital. And also this group support them, not only about capital, but also to promote their product to the member of the group. So maybe if you analyze that, maybe I don't know the situation on your group. Maybe that will be contribute how they can increase the profit. And also we have experience also, we call not mentoring but assisting the group in 4 provinces, Aceh, Riau, and Jakarta, and also Jawa Barat, for digital using to adult women. Because we have intense assisting to them, we change the strategy in the middle of the project. Because what? Because we not see the development of that project. So we collaborate the young generation with the woman entrepreneur. So we choose another member of the household member, the entrepreneur woman, to get coaching, not a special training, just coaching. At the end of the project, the result is a very make our surprise, because that collaboration between the generation, the young generation, and also the woman entrepreneur, the adult woman entrepreneur, it's significant result for that. Because
Thank you so much for sharing that, and we need to talk. I realize that we have to close soon. Do you have like 1 minute to talk about the decision making, and Gloria, 1 minute about increase the uptake of branchless banking?
Yes, so the decision-making index is looking at whether or not women are involved in different decisions in the household. And we looked at a few different ones, but the ones that we saw moving in particular were women either making decisions alone or with their husbands about household purchases, about savings, and about take up and use of a new type of a new type of banking product. So when we're looking at the impact, it's at their declared ability to participate in these different household decisions. I think the point on the proliferation of e-commerce is a very interesting one. We actually saw that the high agent incentives did have a small increase in business registration. So maybe this is something we can think about further and explore a little bit more. And I'll give it over to Gloria in just a second, but I think, also on the peer-to-peer lending, unfortunately our survey doesn't have the information on peer-to-peer lending, not because we don't think it's important, but because the survey was already quite long and we had to limit what we could ask them. But I think that's a very interesting thought. And we actually saw that the high agent incentives lowered the use of money lenders. So there's some shift in lending practices, although we don't have a complete picture on that. And finally, my thought on the what may lead to increased take-up. I think that the matchmaking between the agents and the entrepreneurs, like bringing them together to have business-to-business interactions, I think could hold a lot of promise. And that might be something to test more in the future, but I'll turn it over to Glory to see what she has to add.
Yeah, actually, thank you, Larry, for pointing it out. Actually, on the scale-up training, also funded by ExxonMobil Foundation, we try to matchmaking that to make sure the usage of saving are happening or increase. Maybe this question about why it is savings perceived is more important than the business itself. So this is something that my takeaway from the Financial Inclusion Week in Singapore in September last year, that social and cultural barriers are there, especially in Asia, Southeast Asia. Most of the Indonesian women who own the business, we're talking about micro and below here, very informal sectors. Not all of them who own the business see the business as a business. They're just doing it as another activity to support the household or the husband income. So they're not really taking it seriously to expand it. Some of them yes, but some of them are not. So coming to the training with all the technical things that I explained before and having, writing on a homework and putting all the numbers and everything are troublesome for them. So learning about how to save the money and understand how much you spend at the end of the month is easier for them. So it's one step for us that we can approach in that way, because again, coming to our theory, our assumption, hypothesis at the first, that we assume once the women can do the savings, that can profit in from there, and that's going back into investment to the business.
Thank you so much, and we are right on time, and I will call on Jameel to close the session, and thank you so much for being here.
Ladies and gentlemen, we are almost